Renee Holloway had been staring at the same economics page for nearly an hour, yet she could not remember a single sentence she had read. The words blurred together while worry crowded her mind. Tuition was overdue, final exams had been moved forward, and she feared everything she had worked for was about to fall apart. "You've turned that page 3 times without reading it," a calm voice said. She looked up to find a tall young man carrying 2 coffees. He wore simple clothes, but there was quiet confidence in the way he stood. "I'm just tired," Renee replied. "I'm Caleb." She nodded politely. "Renee." Without asking another question, Caleb pulled out a chair. "Which chapter is giving you trouble?" "Honestly, all of them." He smiled. "Then we'll start with the first page." That afternoon became the beginning of a routine. Every evening they met in the same corner of the university library. Caleb patiently explained difficult lessons, while Renee challenged him to think beyond the answers written in textbooks. Their friendship grew naturally, built on respect instead of appearances. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Caleb stared into the darkness outside. "Have you ever felt like someone else already planned your entire future?" Renee closed her notebook. "Every day. My family owns one of the biggest real estate companies in the state. Everyone expects me to take over. They already chose my career, my friends, and probably the woman they expect me to marry." "And what do you want?" "I don't know anymore." She smiled gently. "Then stop living someone else's dream. Draw your own." He laughed quietly. "You always make impossible things sound simple." "They're never simple," she answered. "They're just worth fighting for." Those words stayed with him. Weeks turned into months, and friendship quietly became love. One afternoon they sat beside a small lake near campus, talking about the future. "I want to open community learning centers," Renee said, "places where adults who never finish school can start again without feeling embarrassed." And Caleb admired the certainty in her voice. "And I want a home that actually feels like home. A place filled with laughter." She grinned. "How many children?" He pretended to think. "Enough to make every holiday unforgettable." She laughed. "That's not a number." "Then let's say 3. Neither of them realized how important those words would become. A few weeks later, Caleb reached across the dinner table and squeezed her hand. "I want you to meet my parents." Renee hesitated. "I've heard stories about your mother." "My mother cares about reputation," he admitted. "But she'll see why I love you." Reluctantly, she agreed. The Whitmore estate looked more like a luxury resort than a family home. Marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers, and every painting seemed chosen to impress visitors. Caleb's mother, Eleanor Whitmore, welcomed Renee with a polished smile that never reached her eyes. "So you're studying education?" "Yes, ma'am." "And your parents?" "My mother teaches elementary school. My father owned a small repair business before he retired." "How?" "Modest." The single word landed harder than an insult. Throughout dinner, Eleanor asked polite questions that felt more like an interview than a conversation. When Renee stepped away to answer a phone call, she accidentally overheard Eleanor speaking to Caleb. "A good heart is admirable," Eleanor said calmly, "but marriages should strengthen families, not weaken them. Renee is everything I've ever wanted." "You believe that because you're young. Love fades, legacy remains." Renee quietly returned before either of them noticed. On the drive home, silence filled the car. Finally she spoke. "Your mother doesn't think I'm good enough." Caleb sighed. "She'll come around. You didn't defend me. I didn't want to make the evening worse." She turned toward the window. "You promised I wouldn't face this alone." Days later, Caleb surprised her with a small velvet box. "I know things aren't perfect," he said, "but I don't want to wait anymore." Inside was a diamond ring. "Marry me." Tears filled Renee's eyes. "Yes." Wedding plans began immediately, but Eleanor quickly inserted herself into every decision. Then, during a family lunch, she casually asked, "Have either of you considered fertility testing before the wedding?" Renee froze. Caleb frowned. "My mother thinks it's the responsible thing." Eleanor folded her hands. "A family like ours must think ahead. Children matter. The future matters." Renee looked directly at Caleb. If we do this, we both get tested. Together. He nodded. Together. Neither of them imagined that one medical appointment would destroy everything they had spent years building. The doctor's office felt unusually quiet. Dr. Mitchell folded his hands before speaking. I want both of you to understand something first. These results do not mean either of you can never have children. Renee reached for Caleb's hand. We understand. The doctor nodded. Caleb, your sperm count is lower than expected. It doesn't make fatherhood impossible, but it may take treatment and time. Caleb stared silently at the report. The doctor continued. Renee, there are also complications affecting your reproductive health. Pregnancy may require careful medical support. So, Caleb asked quietly, there's still hope? Absolutely, the doctor replied. Many couples with similar results go on to have healthy families. The important thing is facing this together. Together. That was the word they had promised each other. But the promise began breaking before they even reached the parking lot. Neither of them spoke during the drive home. The following afternoon, Eleanor arrived unexpectedly. What did the doctor say? She asked. Caleb hesitated. There are challenges for both of us. Eleanor barely acknowledged his answer. She turned toward Renee. I've always believed marriage requires certainty. The doctor said nothing is impossible, Renee answered calmly. Impossible isn't the point, Eleanor replied. Risk is. She stood and adjusted her designer jacket. My son carries generations of responsibility. He cannot build his future on uncertainty. Renee looked at Caleb, waiting for him to speak. He remained silent. That silence hurt far more than Eleanor's words. Over the next several weeks, Caleb buried himself in work. His phone calls became shorter. His visits became fewer. Finally, Renee confronted him. Are you avoiding me? No? Then look at me. He finally did. His eyes were filled with fear. What if we never have children? Renee felt her heart sink. So that's what this is. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She stood. When your grades were failing, I stayed beside you. When you doubted yourself, I believed in you. Now life becomes difficult. And suddenly I'm the problem? I'm scared. So am I. Her voice cracked. But I'm still here. Caleb lowered his head. I don't know if I can do this. The words shattered everything. Renee quietly removed her engagement ring. I hope one day you learn that love isn't tested when life is easy. She placed the ring on the table. It's tested when everything falls apart. Without another word, she walked away. 3 weeks later, dizziness forced Renee into a clinic. After several tests, the doctor smiled. Congratulations. She blinked. For what? You're expecting. Her heart stopped. What? The doctor turned the ultrasound monitor toward her. And there's something else. 3 tiny heartbeats flickered across the screen. You aren't carrying one baby. Renee covered her mouth. You are carrying triplets. Tears streamed down her face. But, they told us. Medicine predicts probabilities, the doctor said gently. Life sometimes writes a different story. Renee left the hospital carrying joy and heartbreak at the same time. She never told Caleb. He had already made his choice. Months later, while struggling with heavy grocery bags outside her apartment, she nearly collapsed. A familiar voice called out, Renee? She looked up. It was Adrian Brooks, an old college friend she had helped years earlier when he was close to losing his scholarship. He immediately noticed her condition. You're pregnant. She nodded. And alone. She looked away. It's complicated. Adrian gently took the grocery bags from her hands. You don't have to explain. Over coffee, she finally told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he simply said, Come stay at my house. I can't. You can. I don't want charity. A warm smile crossed his face. When everyone else walked away from me in college, you didn't. I only helped a friend. And now it's my turn. She reluctantly accepted. Adrian's home was elegant but peaceful, filled with books instead of expensive decorations. The next morning, he gathered his staff. Miss Holloway is family while she's here. Everyone nodded respectfully. Renee watched in surprise. You didn't have to do that. Yes, Adrian answered. I did. He arranged appointments with one of the state's best pregnancy specialists. The doctor reviewed every scan carefully. Triplets are considered high risk. Adrian leaned forward. What does she need? Rest, proper nutrition, regular monitoring, and as little stress as possible. Adrian answered before Renee could. Then that's exactly what she'll have. Over the following months, he attended every appointment, made sure she never missed a meal, and quietly supported her without expecting anything in return. At 32 weeks, the contractions began unexpectedly. Adrian rushed her to the hospital through pouring rain. Hours later, the delivery room echoed with 3 newborn cries. They're all breathing, the doctor announced with a smile. 2 boys and 1 little girl. Adrian closed his eyes in relief. Renee had survived. So had all 3 babies. As he looked through the nursery window, he whispered softly, You've already changed more lives than you'll ever know. 5 years passed. Renee built the life she once imagined, though not in the way she had expected. With Adrian's encouragement and financial partnership, she opened neighborhood learning centers where adults could earn diplomas, learn new skills, and rebuild their confidence. The program spread across the state, eventually becoming one of the country's most respected educational charities. At home, laughter filled every room. The triplets, Liam, Mason, and little Sophie, were curious, kind, and inseparable. To them, Adrian was Uncle Adrian, the dependable man who never missed birthdays, bedtime stories, or school events. One evening, after a school program honoring fathers, Liam quietly asked, Mom, why doesn't everyone else call Uncle Adrian our dad? Renee's smile faded. Because he isn't your father. The children exchanged confused looks. Then where is our real dad? Sophie whispered. Renee took a deep breath. He doesn't know you exist. Why? I left before I knew I was pregnant. Would he want to know us? The question stayed with her all night. The children deserved answers. The next morning, Adrian found her sitting quietly on the porch. You're thinking about telling him? She nodded. They're old enough to ask questions. They deserve the truth. Then tell him. Aren't you afraid of what happens next? Adrian smiled sadly. My feelings don't matter as much as theirs. Within days, Renee learned through the news that Caleb Whitmore was preparing to marry Olivia Sinclair, daughter of another powerful business family. The wedding would also celebrate a major corporate merger between Whitmore Development and the Sinclair Group. Then an invitation arrived. It was addressed to Renee. She understood immediately. Someone wanted her to witness Caleb's perfect new life. Instead of throwing it away, she accepted. But she made one decision first. Months earlier, Adrian had quietly transferred ownership of the educational foundation to Renee after insisting it belonged to the woman whose dream had built it. That foundation had since acquired struggling companies, including Whitmore Development, after a devastating financial collapse. Caleb had remained its public CEO, never realizing the anonymous investor who rescued the company was Renee herself. On the morning of the wedding, Renee dressed in a simple navy blue suit instead of an evening gown. The children wore matching formal clothes. As they entered the grand ballroom, conversations stopped. Guests stared at the 3 children. They look exactly like Caleb. Caleb turned toward the entrance. The color drained from his face. Renee. Sophie tugged gently on her mother's hand. Is that him? Renee nodded. Yes. Caleb slowly walked closer, unable to look away from the children. They're your children. Silence swept across the room. I never knew, Caleb whispered. You never asked. His shoulders slumped. I failed you. You did. I thought leaving was the safest choice. It was the easiest choice. Before he could answer, Olivia stepped forward. She looked from Caleb to the children, then quietly removed her engagement ring. I always knew part of your heart belonged somewhere else. Olivia. She shook her head. This isn't about another woman. It's about 3 children who deserve a father. She smiled sadly. I hope you don't waste a second chance. Without anger or drama, she walked away. Caleb turned back to the triplets. I can't ask you to trust me. Liam crossed his arms. Can we trust you? I haven't earned that. Mason looked up. Are you going to disappear again? No. How do we know? You don't. Caleb knelt until he was at eye level. The only proof I can give is showing up every day until you believe me. The children looked toward their mother. Renee gave a small nod. The choice is yours. Sophie stepped forward first. Can we start by getting ice cream? Caleb laughed through tears. I'd love that. Weeks became months. True to his word, Caleb never missed a visit, a school concert, or a birthday. He learned bedtime routines, homework schedules, and the little things that make someone a parent instead of merely a father. Eventually, he confronted Eleanor. You taught me to protect our family's name, he said quietly. But I almost lost my real family because of it. For the first time in her life, Eleanor had no defense. She later visited Renee alone. I confused pride with wisdom, she admitted. I'm deeply sorry. I appreciate the apology, Renee replied. Trust takes longer. It should. Time slowly healed what apologies never could. One afternoon, Caleb visited the learning center Renee had built. Adults of every age filled the classrooms, chasing dreams they had once believed were impossible. You built all of this? He asked. Renee smiled. We both talked about changing lives. You were the one who actually did it. He looked around before adding quietly, Thank you for giving me the chance to become the father I should have been. Renee looked toward the playground where Liam, Mason, Sophie, and Adrian were laughing together. The children didn't need a perfect father, she said. They only needed one who finally chose to stay. And for the first time in many years, the future belonged to all of them. Subscribe, like, comments, and share. See you in our next video.